Welcome all. We are gathered here today, not in the French countryside on a warm summer day, but in the cold and the gray of a city that we all call home. For gone are the vineyards and the baguettes and the lilacs under the shadow of a stoic castle. But as we stand here, our warmth comes from the love we share and the castles that we have created that are built on the bonds of friendship that we have all made. A French castle sitting idly without this love is just a mountain of stone and mortar. What we have here surpasses even the most beautiful of sceneries. We have each other. This celebration of love between Nathalie and James cannot be made possible without the unending support of their families. Though you are all not here physically, your presence is deeply felt. Nathalie and James have called upon us all today at a time of great anxiety and distress to remind ourselves that hope, friendship, and love will prevail, always. When I was asked by Nathalie and James to be a part of this very special day and serve as their vision, I jumped at the chance. I did so because it is one of my life's greatest honors to be asked to preside over the moments when two people become one through the union of marriage. It is in being a part of that moment where two people vow their undying love and devotion to each other that I find the greatest of all inspirations. I'm inspired because nowhere else can you find a moment in your life where you are allowed to watch the exact second that two people very much in love, promise to each other that no matter what life throws them from this day forward, be it joy or sadness, laughter or tears, sickness or health, triumph or disappointment, a Laker win or a Knicks loss, that they will never face it alone. They are giving their minds and their bodies and their souls to each other before all of us today. It is one of a handful of selfless acts that still actually exists today, and this is the act that I am inspired most of because it provides all of us with hope. Hope that if two people are willing to give themselves to each other fully, especially at this specific moment in time, with what's happening in the world right now, the human race still may have something left in the gas tank. So, let's get these two married and end this year on the highest of notes. Nathalie and James have called upon two very special people in their lives, Chris Del Chapio and Katie Geronimo Ryan, to stand beside them today to represent their wedding parties, which had to be abbreviated for this ceremony due to what's going on with whatever we're going to call this moment in time 20 years from now. To all those of the groomsmen and the bridesmaids that could not be in attendance and who are either watching their ceremony from afar in real time or may watch it later when they are able to do so, please know that you all are very much here. You were here in Nathalie and James's thoughts and their hearts. As Nathalie and James so elegantly pointed out earlier in this intro, without your love and support, this fine couple would not be here today. And for that, you are just a part of the ceremony as any of us here. You are missed and you are loved, but most of all, you are appreciated. In place of what would typically be a formal reading, Nathalie and James have asked the lone bridesmaid and groomsmen to share some words on the couple being wed before us today. First up, Chris Del Chapio.
It was just over 15 years ago that I met James 2 doors down on the first floor in Donovan Hall. Tall and wearing a lot of dark clothes and earplugs, I remember thinking he looked like the fifth and way more hardcore member of the Ramones. And I definitely remember thinking, as a dude from Rhode Island sporting frosted tips and dressed like a poster boy for American Eagle, James and I would at best end up trading niceties as we passed each other in the hall or at Montgomery every now and then. But as those first few weeks of freshman year went on, without me even realizing it, James and I started to become close, and it was all thanks to him. Because you see, what the contrast in clothes should have told me is that James is undoubtedly a free spirit. A person who knew how to see past superficial differences like where you're from and the clothes you wear. He sees past all those things, and as you spend time with him, he'll get to know you and bond with you in such a seamless way. And that's exactly what happened to us. Sharing time outside Donovan Hall, sneaking beers into the dorms, once with disastrous results, hanging out by the dugouts by the softball field. We got close. And as we did, not only did I notice that hanging out with James felt like hanging out with friends back home, because that's who James is and that's how he makes you feel. I also noticed that James really knew his stuff when it came to music, great movies, great books, history, art, everything really. He was the only person I knew that year besides me who actually liked his Philosophy 1000C class. He really was one of the first Renaissance people I ever met, because his free spirit allowed him to be. And not only did he love to talk about these things, he always wanted to learn and discover more about them. I respected that, and I admired that. And I wanted to be there with James as he worked toward that goal of truth, of universality, a categorical imperative all his own. Little did I know how important this would end up being for us over the whole course of our friendship, right up to this very moment. As college went on, James and I grew even closer, still bonding over that search and debate for what is ultimately true and lasting and enduring. James was an English major and I was a philosophy major. Our paths would cross in certain classes, tucked away in the mossy stones of St. John's Hall and at the infamous 17281 Highland Avenue. We'd find ourselves in some corner or on the balcony outside, comparing notes, so to speak, and racking the brains of some of the greatest minds in Western thought, searching, yearning to discover what it was about life that was true and meaningful and lasting. And that free-spirited attitude of James is what always got the conversations going. Back then, I wasn't the most outgoing person, and it was James that encouraged me to be open and confident about the things I love. James is an intellectual. James is a free spirit. He never shied away from that. Even as we weren't crossing paths, by senior year, when I was living in Manhattan, James and I would meet for drinks downtown and catch independent movies at the IFC Theater, continuing to bond, to discuss, to search for truth. But as great as all that was, there weren't that many categorical truths that we could settle on. On more than one occasion, the morning after a late night out, with our heads feeling like they'd been split open with a pickaxe, nursing the unbearable pain of a hangover, we might have discovered what a hack Sartre was when he said that physical pain is nothing compared to existential dread. But that wasn't much of a discovery. Maybe there really wasn't anything like a categorical truth. Maybe there wasn't anything that was ultimately lasting, enduring, and unshakable. Maybe the only thing all those conversations and searching did was show what pretentious morons we were. As time went on and college ended, true to my form, I got a job at a law firm, then went to law school, and then got another job while in New York, checking off items like I had some big to-do list for my career. But James, true to his form, as someone unafraid to explore and follow his instincts, always the free spirit, always driven by his curiosity and search for truth and knowledge, worked in some different careers, studied at Florida State, unafraid to strike out on his own in a new place in his drive to always learn more, and let his curiosity and ambition take him to where he is now. He was, and is, the antithesis of tunnel vision. James kept exploring as I went through the motions. Although from time to time we'd strike up one of our old pseudo-intellectual soirees from college during this time, or still take trips to explore the unknown, like our drive across the Gulf Coast to see Mobile, Alabama and Biloxi, Mississippi. It seemed like the realities of getting older were starting to weigh more and more heavily. Maybe our search for truth had kind of come to an end, even with James shouldering the load as best he could with his spirit of exploration and his free spirit. But then something amazing happened that, as I look back, may have reignited that search for what is true and lasting without either of us realizing it. James met Nathalie. I will never forget what really took me aback about Nathalie when I met her. She was as kind and loving and free-spirited a person as James is. Just like James had all those years ago, when I first met Nathalie and started hanging out with her, she made me feel, without me even realizing it, like we'd been friends for years. Nathalie didn't focus on where I was from or what I did for work or how I dressed. She was dating James, I was friends with James, and that was enough for her to want to get to know me in a deeper way, to be kind to me, to be open to me, and to get close with me, as she did with all of James's friends. Nathalie was a free spirit just like James. Nathalie was open to learning and discovering new things and new people just like James. And not just that, she made that discovery fun and seamless, and she brought more people into our lives for us to discover and learn from. Nathalie understood the immeasurable value and fun of bringing new people into one's life. Her annual Friendsgiving is probably the strongest testament to this, as is her lighthearted embrace of those around her and her infectious smile. And as time went on, I saw not only how sublimely happy Nathalie was making James, but I also saw that it was through Nathalie and her own free-spiritedness and openness to new things that James was continuing that search for truth that he and I had started so long ago. I couldn't quite put into words exactly what was being looked for, and I had no idea anyone would know how it had been found. But even if this search for truth was like trying to reach the horizon, always journeying towards it but never quite getting there, I could see that with Nathalie by his side, James was incalculably happier and more secure making that journey. And seeing one of my oldest and dearest friends endowed with that kind of love and happiness, all thanks to Nathalie, makes my own heart full. And even in the absence of some kind of greater infallible truth, maybe that joy and fullness is enough. And for a long time, that sense of joy and fullness, the happiness I felt for James having found such an adventurous, kind, loving, welcoming, and beautiful person in Nathalie was enough. I didn't need to find some answer to life in its true nature. But as I stand here, seeing with my own eyes and celebrating James and Nathalie's love with all of you, each of whom we all love so deeply, and their endless love of life and adventure and openness to it, I think that by finding Nathalie and falling in love with her, and coming to love and appreciate all of us and the wonderful people Nathalie has brought into all our lives, I think James may have ended up discovering that ultimate, infallible truth, probably the deepest, most free-spirited, philosophical truth of all. How precious and wonderful life is, and the loved ones with whom we share it. James and Nathalie, congratulations. We love you.
For the second reading, Katie.
Hello. For those of you tuned in on Zoom who don't know me, my name is Katie Ryan, and the camera actually has 20 packs. Nathalie asked me to say a few words today about her and James, and since I may never be married, she now wishes me that you would be. In college, it may have appeared that they had little in common other than the length of their hair and the eyeliner they wore. But years later, we know that their most important commonalities, at least in my opinion, are the fact that they're two of the kindest people anyone could be lucky enough to meet, and that each of them loves the other deeply. Plus, they balance each other out. Nathalie, always laughing at all of his jokes. James, always making that possible by not repeating the ones at her expense that go over her head. Nathalie, always bringing people together for various events and themed gatherings. James, not having to leave the house to attend them. It's true. Nathalie, most importantly, always making sure she keeps the people she loves close to her. And James, always making sure he'll always be the person she loves. I know that I speak for at least the people physically present when I say that most of the best memories I've made over the past few years have been made inside the single home that they built inside Barry's apartment building. And for that, I think that we're all extremely grateful. Just want to thank you for always being there for all of us, and for each other. We wish you nothing but the best of love, happiness, love and happiness always.
Nathalie and James have prepared their own vows to each other. When a bride and groom exchange their vows, it is a chance for all of us to see them communicate to their soulmate their truest intent of why they wanted to get married in the first place. It is in their own words that we can see their love for each other shine through as the foundation for their future lives together takes form before all of our eyes. So, no pressure at all. Up first, Nathalie. James.
Nathalie, my flower bride and sunshine queen, it's an honor and privilege to be standing here next to you today. You are the personification of strength and resilience, my personal hero and the perfect symphony. The brilliance you radiate has adorned the respect of so many, and I only promise to not dampen nor dull it. I vow to always look with splendor as you come into my view. I vow to be your stoic, your shoulder to cry on, and your best friend. I vow to always harness that Mamba mentality when times get tough. The Kobe Bryant Game 6 in the 2010 NBA Finals against Paul Pierce and the Boston Celtics mentality. I vow to always love you because to me, you are so far beyond perfect. It is at times incomprehensible that I've ever gotten this lucky, and I love you.
Now, Nathalie.
For as long as I can remember, I have dreamt about my wedding day. I thought about what I'd wear, where it would be, who would be there, and most importantly, I dreamt of who I'd be marrying. Nearly 14 years ago, I met the one. He was kind, funny, unique, and truly magnetic. Anytime I saw him in the halls of Marillac or at Trads, he'd go in for his signature hug and kiss on the cheek. My heart would skip several beats. Years later, we met, and not to be completely cliche, but it was fireworks, butterflies, and sweaty palms. My darling James, though nothing is the way I had imagined it, you are better than anything I could have ever dreamed for. From the moment our paths crossed all those years ago, I knew you were special. You had completely captured my heart, and I still cannot believe I get to marry you. I promise to love you forever and ever. I promise to be your friend and partner. I promise to always do better. I promise to be there for you every step of the way, in sickness and in health. If health skyrockets 1,000%, or if we're eating instant ramen, I promise to love you with my whole heart for the rest of my life.
Well done. We can all feel the love that is between you guys that will continue to last the rest of your days. It was to exemplify vows to each other. So thank you for allowing us to be a part of that. We're going to exchange the rings now. So ring bearers, you guys are on. Nathalie and James will now exchange their wedding rings. The wedding ring is a symbol of a couple's commitment to love each other, and that commitment being from here to eternity. A wedding ring being the shape of a circle is by no means an accident. A circle, if you think about it, is really the perfect shape to exemplify marriage, as it is but one continuous line without end. To take the metaphor further, two circles that are placed next to each other, as these two rings shall be when Nathalie and James interlock hands shortly, go on to form the symbol for infinity. The concept of infinity is inherent in all marriages, as the wedding ring signifies undying loyalty, limitless possibilities, and most of all, endless love. Nathalie, please place the ring on James's left finger and repeat after me. As a sign of my love,
As a sign of my love,
that I have chosen you
that I have chosen you
above all else.
above all else.
With this ring,
With this ring,
I thee wed.
I be wed.
James, place the ring on Nathalie's left finger and repeat after me. As a sign of my love,
Sign of my love.
that I have chosen you
That I have chosen you
above all else.
above all else.
With this ring, I thee wed. We may not know what the future brings, but what we do know now is that Nathalie and James, you will face it shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, and heart to heart as husband and wife for the rest of your days, and may those days be long. And now, by the power vested in me in the state of New York and the Church of Human Spiritualism, which I assure you is a real thing, it is with my great joy and with great happiness that I declare you married this day. Go forth and live your lives to the fullest, and you may now kiss the bride. Ladies and gentlemen, I now introduce to you the husband and the bride, Nathalie Marcille and James Henley.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. You should say hi.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that's good, man. Let's go do it.
All right.